Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone. It's a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops, and my name is Charlie, call sign November Juliet 7 Victor. With me this evening are the show's two co-hosts, Dan, KC7MSU, and Brian, W7JET. And I am pleased to introduce to you tonight's guest, Tim, N7KOM.
Howdy, howdy.
And of course, as always, we have the regular characters in the chat room. If you have a comment or question, go ahead and throw that in the chat feed, and we will do our best to respond. Also, don't forget that we convert this show over to a podcast, and it's usually available about 24 hours after the show. So let's get caught up on what's been going on. I think it's been 3 weeks because of the holidays since we last had our live stream. So let's go ahead and see what everybody's been up to. Dan, what do you say?
Well, I haven't really been up to much amateur radio-wise, just experiencing lots of new things in life. And however, next Saturday, it looks like I am going to be on Lone Mountain here in the valley, participating in the VHF contest. Haven't decided if I'm going to take HF up or not, but it's been a while since I've even been on HF, so maybe I'll plan to take that up as well and activate that mountain on HF while playing in the VHF contest as well.
Okay, great. Cool. All right. Brian, what have you been up to?
Let's see. Flying. So I've been posting some pictures of my work activities on the social media groups, POTA and SOTA. So was up in Sholo twice in the last 2 weeks and did some SOTA up there. First one was Porter Mountain, lots of snow, very reminiscent of 49 from Charlie and I a few years ago with the drifts trudging through that. And then this week I was on Cicero, Trigo, and Cicero Matasso. And again, snow on those, not as much as the previous week. And just at home, chasing the DX. Wanted to get the Crozet and the logbook, and I got them on 20 meter CW and 20 meter FT8. So that's cool. Number 3 most wanted off the list. And I've been chasing that Tango November 8 kilo when I've been sitting around the house, and have them on 10 through 80. I need to get them on 160 now. That would make me happy. So
that's cool.
Other than that, that's it. Just doing the portable ops. Actually, I've got to do some surgery. Something happened with my little hard rock amp that I use when I'm doing my POTA activations. If I don't know if anybody worked me on the group doing the riparian area out by Safford, the Gila box. I was running there, and halfway through that activation, it gave up the ghost on me. It stopped transmitting for some reason, so I got to pull it apart and see if I could figure out what happened to it. I may have to reach out to the higher powers and get some insight, but just all of a sudden stopped putting power out and it's attenuating the signal. Nothing was coming back through. Relay's clicking, but it's not receiving either, or it's preventing from receiving. Anyway, that's what happened. That's what I've been up to. Over to you, Charlie.
So a lot, huh? That's cool. Yeah, I haven't been doing a lot either.
Busy.
I've been actually I was sick this last couple of days here, pretty bad. I was in bed all day Friday, and just had a stomach bug. But I was planning on going out on Saturday, but wasn't feeling well enough. And now it's going to be raining on Monday, so I guess I won't be getting out for a bit yet. But I had planned on going up to Flagstaff in the snow with Sandy, and it's probably not a good idea this time right now because of all the storms and everything. But plan to next weekend go camping in the snow, not do a SOTA, but I've been asked to be a part of my church's youth group again and lead things there. So why not start out by having a fun little camp out in the snow? So we're going to take up a bunch of boys up there and have them freeze their butts off.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. And after that, I think I'll probably get a little SOTA in, but I haven't been up to much other than that. It's been a good holiday, and it's good to be back. So, all right, Tim, what about you?
Yeah, getting back into the swing of things since the holiday. I've been dipping my toes into kit building, and just wrapped up the QDX.
Oh, nice.
Which I didn't have a case for. I didn't order the aluminum enclosure, so I looked around and saw this playing card deck, and I built the radio into that.
That's nice.
That's cool.
Cool.
So let's see if we plug it on, and oh, you can just barely see the LED there on the back side.
Cool.
It's more for show. It's not a very durable case, but I'll try using this with the Android FT8 app and maybe do a little portable FT8 SOTA activation stuff.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun. I have a QDX kit that I haven't built yet. I've got it at Dayton, and I still haven't got it. I've been working on something else over here, going live on TikTok. Although I haven't been on live for a week or two, but I've been building a receiver, a direct conversion receiver. So yeah, I like the kit building stuff too. Pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do the mini this week, and so
yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if it'll be harder or easier than the QDX.
A lot of toroids to wind, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw your toroid winding video. It still made me very nervous after my last experiences. So it wasn't quite that relaxing for me. So
yeah, I'm still working on the kit building video angle stuff. My hands always get in the way, and it's hard to maintain the focus. Like I filmed all the soldering for doing this QDX, and I was gonna do kind of like this like nice piano music on the back end. And every time I go to solder, just my left hand is blocking the entire board on the camera. And the thing was, when I would like lean back to look and check the frame and make sure everything was in focus on the camera, of course my hand was coming away from that. So everything looked clear, and then I'd go back and block everything. So I'm gonna have to remake that video. Maybe I'll just do like a but all the parts magically coming onto the board.
that might work. All right. Well, Tim, it's really nice to have you. Tim has been on our show. This is his third time, but the two times before he was kind of with a group of people, kind of as a co-guest. So we didn't really get a lot of time to talk to him on the last two times that he was on. So we wanted to give him his own opportunity here. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got started in ham radio?
Yeah, great to be here, Charlie, Dan, and Brian. Thanks for having me. A little about myself. I guess the biggest thing I'm known for is having a Summits on the Air YouTube channel, N7KOM, Mountaintop Portable, and mostly doing winter and snow activations, often on skis. Those tend to be my most popular videos, where I'm skiing up and down some of the bigger volcanoes that we have here in the Pacific Northwest around the Portland area. And what got me into ham radio was I got a Baofeng, thinking it would be really good to have in the backcountry just for like listening to the NOAA weather stations. And it arrived the day before I was about to go out and volunteer for a search and rescue. And on that, I ended up being the person who found the body, and I wasn't licensed, but I had to use the Baofeng on an FRS to let people know that, where it was and stuff. And after that day, I was like, okay, I'm going to get my license so I can actually use this thing. And shortly after doing that, I found one of your videos, Charlie, on the QRZ homepage. And, it was something like earning SOTA points while you sleep or something.
Right.
And you were getting up early in the morning and hiking up a summit and making contacts. And that's when everything clicked for me. I was like, oh, wow, people are taking their radios up mountains. I'm already hiking up mountains. And it was a very slippery slope from there. Community around the Portland area for Summits on the Air that helped me kind of learn and get into it, and outgrew the Baofeng very quickly. And now I know Morse code, which I never would have even thought I would ever get into something like that. It just opened up a whole world to me.
That's cool. Well, when you first got going into Summits on the Air, though, for the first little bit you were VHF only, right?
Yeah, VHF only.
Do you have any stories about that, or how that was, the experience with that?
Yeah, so you can do it in the Portland metro area. There's plenty of summits that are close by, but they're all one pointers. And so as I started wanting to get more points, and you kind of have to go to some summits that are farther out, it's getting harder and harder. I picked up a MFJ Long Ranger that was recommended to me, which is an amazing antenna for VHF. It's still my favorite VHF antenna. I got a Yagi, stuff like that, and just kind of stuff to give you some extra range.
So that Ranger is like a telescoping whip, right?
Yeah, well, I actually don't have it right by me. Yeah, it's a half-wave whip. I think it retails for around 20, 25 bucks, and it's an incredible antenna. I've actually, the very first time I used it, I got a summit to summit that was 200 miles with Bill Whiskey Juliet 7 Whiskey Juliet, and I think he had a Yagi going or something. But I like first successful SOTA outing, like getting a 200-mile summit to summit. Like, what a way to get hooked! Like, I was just buzzing after that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. And so you, I almost lost my question because I was going to mention to you that your audio initially was coming in through your camera, but it looks like it's coming in through your earbuds now. So whenever you bump it, you make a lot of noise. So
okay, I'll try to stand still.
that's fine. So, but I was going to say, what was your longest? And then you kind of already mentioned that maybe was that the longest activation you had as far as the VHF.
Longest summit to summit for a while. That was it. My longest is 370 miles, I think.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, and I had the MFJ Long Ranger, and oh shoot, I'm gonna mess up James' call.
Oh, James, yes.
Yeah, is it Whiskey Alpha 7 Juliet November Juliet? Oh yeah, there he is in the chat. Yeah, I was on Mary's, and I can't remember where he was, but he had a band pass filter with a logarithmic Yagi. I think he had the elk off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Maybe he can let us know in the chat. Oh, 273 miles. I thought it was farther, but
that's all right.
That's still pretty good and
significant. Yeah.
Yeah, for 2 meters.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, so we're here today to talk a little bit about the high adventure stuff that you do.
Yeah.
Before we go into that, Dan and Brian, did you have any more questions on what we were just talking about here, or anything come to mind before we move on?
No, just that if you haven't seen a lot of Tim's videos, go on over there, take a good look, because he's got quite a few where he's up early and catching the sunrise. He's got some pretty spectacular views of that. So really nice camera work.
Yeah, it's always worth it when you're going up to these high summits to get an early start and catch that sunrise.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that you like to do snow activations and some of these volcanoes. So talk a little bit more about that, and first of all, just kind of what some of your favorite summits are, and then maybe after you talk a little bit about that, then maybe what your approach is to which ones you choose and why, and then we'll kind of hop into how you prepare for them.
Yeah, so I think my favorite summit would have to be Mount St. Helens. Excuse me. It's not the highest in the area. It's not the most challenging, but that's actually my background here is catching sunrise from up there. It just has an amazing view from the crater rim, and especially if you're doing an early morning activation and getting up there in time for sunrise, it's really special.
Yeah.
And I can kind of talk through. I don't know. Did we want to get into like specifics of?
Well, I'm just curious.
Certain hikes, or
well, so what are so that's your favorite one. Do you have any that are like that you can think of that had some memorable experience with them? You know, they all have certain. I mean, when I go on summits on the air activations, they all have certain things about them that are unique. But there's a few that are really memorable for one reason or another. Either things went wrong or things went really right, or whatever. But what are some of your most memorable?
Yeah, I think looking back to last year, I did Mount Hood in January, which I do like to hit it in the winter if there's a weather window. A weather window being a time that it's not storming on the mountain and you're able to kind of get up there a bit more safely. And it tends to have less crowds in the winter. Once you get into March, it's like half of the city of Portland is trying to get up the volcano sort of thing. And when there's less people, in my opinion, it can be a little bit safer just because you can get up and down a bit quicker. There's not traffic jams up the main routes. You don't have to worry about people kicking ice or snow down on top of you, or God forbid someone falls off and then they're headed towards you, sort of thing. So Mount Hood, me and two buddies got started, I think around 3 a.m. And from there you start at Timberline Lodge. So the very nice thing about Mount Hood is there's no approach. You drive up to a ski resort and park your car and walk over, fill out a little permit form that's free, and you drop that off. I think that they just kind of use those to track the number of people headed up, and
So no
if there's an
permit?
accident or something, I think they use that form to help locate, what car is yours in the parking lot. And
So there's no permit then, huh?
yeah, well, yeah, it's a permit. It's free. You just go fill it out and drop it in the box, and there's free wag bags there that you also grab. So get that, and then you start heading up the climbers trail.
Wait,
And
what's a wag bag?
really,
Yeah.
well, it's a bag you shit in, so you don't leave your poop on the mountain.
I had no idea.
I've not heard of a wag bag before. That's a new one on me too.
Never heard of that.
We usually use poop tickets, but
Well, I say
In a hole.
the poop tickets.
Well, what's a poop ticket?
Poop tickets. They come on a roll.
yeah, you use a poop
Got
ticket
it.
and then you bury it 6 inches in the ground.
Yeah, that's that. Certainly, I've done that out in the wilderness, but on these high traffic volcanoes, I think things would get pretty dirty pretty fast, especially if people are burying them in the snow, and then that's melting out come springtime.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's leave no trace, pack it in, pack it out sort of thing.
man, you
up
guys
here.
in Washington, I tell you.
Yeah,
Leave no frozen treats behind.
yeah.
All
And,
right, cool.
Sorry,
Sorry,
always make sure there's nothing hanging off your climbing harness too when you're dropping trowel. I heard a story of one guy, he pooped and then he went to use his wag bag to clean it all up and he couldn't find it, and he eventually found it in his climbing helmet that was on his harness. So
oh my gosh.
Oh,
anyway,
not good. Not good.
anyway, now that we've got the red tape out of the way, you start up from the climbers parking lot at Timberline Lodge, and there's a cat track that they've paved, so to speak, up the mountain. So you start up that, and that will take you to the top of Palmer Ski Lift, which is kind of the top of the ski resort there. And that's about an 1.5 to 2 hour hike, depending how fast you go. And that's kind of where we like to, that's like our first checkpoint, so to speak. So me and two buddies, we go up there and we have our breakfast. At this point, it's 4:30, 5 in the morning. After that, take our jackets off again because we start heading up and start heating up. And the terrain gets icier and steeper above Palmer. And then as you go higher up on the mountain, up on the volcano, you start getting wafts of sulfurous gas coming off.
Seriously.
That nice rotten egg smell, and that can interfere with how your body feels. And
Yeah,
one of my buddies got a little sick there when we were on the way up, and him and another buddy who was the two guys I was with at that time ended up turning around, and I was still feeling pretty good, so I continued on solo. And I have done Mount Hood a number of times, so I know the route, and I'm pretty comfortable going up there by myself. So from the top of Palmer, the next objective is Devil's Kitchen, which is the name of the fumarole, and that's where all that sulfurous gas is coming off of. And I tell you, like, there's some days it's bad, some days it's worse. It really depends on how windy it is. So if it's windy, it kind of blows the gas through and it's gone real quick. But I've definitely gotten like a breath full, and there's not much oxygen in it. It's mostly just rotten egg, and that's not a lot of fun.
No.
But that's the next checkpoint. So head up to there.
How many miles at that point?
Ooh, miles. Actually, I have a map here. It's not a lot of miles round trip. I want to say it's
Mostly
like around
elevation,
6 round trip to the top.
Okay. That's not
But
bad at all.
it's a lot of elevation gain. So Timberline Lodge is at about 5,800 feet. And then the top of the Palmer Glacier, that is around, yeah, so that's around 8,500. And then Devil's Kitchen, the next checkpoint, that's going to be around 10,000 feet.
Okay.
So it's not a lot of mileage. With these volcanoes, I usually don't think of it in terms of mileage. It's more thinking about the elevation and how much you have to go up.
Yeah, 5,000 feet of elevation is a lot.
Yeah, and you still got one to go after that. Mount Hood is 11. So Devil's Kitchen is another good spot to take a break. It's a little bit of a bowl, so the steepness of the mountain eases off and you're able to kind of relax a little bit. And that's where I like to ditch my skis. I'm not a great steep snow skier, and usually I'm going up very early in the morning when it's a lot more icy. I think people who do the skiing off the summit of Mount Hood really like to head down around like 11 a.m. And for me, I'm usually down the mountain by that time. So I ditch my skis a bit lower down on the mountain and then continue on up. The next objective is Hog's Back Saddle. So you head up from Devil's Kitchen, and Hog's Back is this really neat ridge line. And I wonder if here, can I share a screen real quick?
Absolutely.
I don't know if this will come through. Okay, can you see this, Charlie?
Yeah,
Looks
it's right there.
coming up.
Yeah, so so do you see this sharp line here? In the hillshade, not the red line to the right.
You talking about the trail itself or something else?
No trail.
One of the contours.
Yeah, so looking at the contours, let me see if I can. There we go. Do you see this line in the hillshade?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a feature on Mount Hood called Hog's Back. And it is a sharp line of snow that just goes straight up the mountain. So here's kind of where Devil's Kitchen is, and you make your way up to the saddle of Hog's Back here. And over on the other side of the ridge is another fumarole called Hot Rocks. So you got like sulfurous gases wafting off of that. You have a big kind of cool volcanic rock feature here called Crater Rock. And then it is just a stairmaster up the Hog's Back.
Oh, wow.
And if someone's been up ahead of you, which is always good, let me see if I can stop that. Then you have a nice boot pack to head up. But if you're early in the first one up, you got to kick those steps in, and it's a little bit of an extra workout.
Boy.
So anyway, on this particular outing, met a group of guys up there, and one guy was throwing up from the altitude and the sulfur. I think I had some Pepto-Bismol in my medical kit, so I gave him some of those. And those guys were turning around, but one guy wanted to continue ahead. And so we kind of joined up as partners and headed up the Hog's Back. And from the very top of Hog's Back, there's kind of two ways to go. You can go way far left up a route called the Old Chute, which just has a bit of an extra traverse in it. Or you can go kind of a more direct route up what's called the Pearly Gates. And these are kind of steeper, icier chutes that you have to climb up. And conditions vary on Mount Hood, day to day and week to week, especially in winter. I've gone up the mountain where the final push to the top is a nice, easy snow slope, and I've gone up when it's kind of a steep ice and a bit sketchy, and I only had one ice axe, and it was not fun, let's say.
Yeah, a little sketchy.
Sketchy and
crampons
high
and an ice axe?
consequence also. Sorry, Dan?
So crampons and an ice axe are pretty much
Oh yeah,
required?
crampons and an ice axe. Usually put those on either in the parking lot or at the top of Palmer. But yeah, so crampons and ice axe is essential equipment. And I'm a little older now, a little more cautious in my climbing, so I actually take 2 ice axes now. It's just the conditions are variable. I've been up with one, but it's just more comfortable to have 2. You can balance a little bit better and pick your way up. But on this particular outing, so you have a choice in the pearly gates. You can go up the left chute or the right chute. And keep in mind, this is early in the morning. It's dark, so we're using headlamps. And we're looking at the left chute, and it looks like there's a bridge of ice, like a tunnel of ice. It's completely closed in. Like we're not even sure that we could fit up it with our backpacks and stuff. So we say, okay, let's check out the right side. And the right side looked a little bit steeper, but as we're headed over to it, a guy is coming down it, and he's bailing. And he has 2 like proper technical ice climbing ice axes. So that kind of shook our confidence a little bit. We're like, oh, holy shit, this guy is bailing. And we have, I had a mountaineer's axe and then what's called a whippet, which is like a ski pole with a ice axe at the top of it. And that differs from a technical ice climbing ice axe where it has like it's more hook shaped and you can really like swing it and get it into the ice. So we spent about probably 15 minutes kind of looking at each other, looking at this ice chute that we have to go up, that we just saw this guy back off of. And it's like, well, shit, I can't climb that. We're thinking that like the main thing of the chute is this big, like, just bulbous piece of ice that we would have to like kind of go completely vertical and off and up and over. So finally, after about 16 minutes of sitting on like a really steep slope of ice, just sort of not sure what to do, we're like, well, let's go up and take a look at it. We can always back down. And we head up, and sure enough, there was a little steep section of ice, but it was not the big thing we thought the guy that came off was talking about. And we were able to just start 1, 2, 1, 2 and picking our way up this steep ice chute. And it's a really amazing feeling being up so high and being on steep ice, and then it starts to shoal out a little bit, gets a little easier, and then the sun is coming up. And you're able to look back down and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. In the dark, it looked a lot worse. But it's such a great feeling, like kind of getting through that danger zone and then getting to easier terrain finally on the summit and then picking our way over to the summit proper. It was really a kind of special sunrise that morning.
That sounds amazing.
It does.
And
so,
just real quick, I just want to say, like, I'm not a badass ice climber. Like, there are way more technical routes to get up Mount Hood on ice where people have ropes and they're making anchors and doing multiple like vertical ice climbs. This is one of the easier routes to get up.
yeah. No, still it's something. I mean, it's a lot. 6,000 feet of elevation gain, and just by itself. Then you add the snow and the ice. Woo!
Yeah.
You obviously have to be very fit. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because you're younger than a lot of the people who do summits on the air. So obviously you're still in your prime, so to speak. Do you
thank you.
Do you do anything physically to keep yourself in shape to do these things, or are you still kind of just like, I'm young, I can just do whatever?
A little column A, a little column B. I do train. I run a lot and I cycle a lot, and I'm currently in a training plan to do an ultra marathon. Not like a specific race, but here in Portland, there's a big city park called Forest Park, and it has about 30 miles from the north end to the south end of trails. So I'd like to, I'd like to run that in one big push. So
Okay. Well,
that's what I'm training for right now.
So would you say for something like this that cardio training is really important?
Yeah, I would say cardio is important. Really doing anything with hills would be the most important thing, if you can. And if you can put on a backpack with a bit of weight, and even going like up and down stairs in your house to get that elevation, doing kind of the Stairmaster thing.
Yeah, so it's a combo of cardio and then making sure you're exercising the right muscles for climbing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's climbing techniques called the kick step, which you can kind of, while you're hiking up, you can swing your legs in such a way that you're giving the muscles a little bit of rest. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you kind of get in that rhythm and start doing it, it makes a big difference too.
So where did you learn that, the kick step? And
Yeah.
and to follow up with that question real quick, answer that. But then I'll also just training in general, because you talked about using ice axes and you talked about the crampons, and how do you know and get the experience and understanding of using those?
Yeah, so I guess it all started when I first moved to Portland, and I was like, well, hell, there's these big old volcanoes right here. I want to get into mountaineering. So I bought I think my sister gave it to me for Christmas, actually. It's called Freedom of the Hills. And I would say it is the Bible for mountaineering, climbing, and ice climbing. And it covers everything from the gear you need for mountaineering to the specific climbing techniques, to geology and reading the weather and reading the snow. It really is the book to have. So if anyone's interested in getting into mountaineering, I think that's a great spot to start. You can usually find them at used bookstores for pretty cheap, and that's a great way to like just sort of start learning the technique. Now, coming into this, I was a rock climber for many years, so I had a lot of experience doing like multi-pitch, traditional rock climbs. So that traditional is where you're placing your own protection, like cams and nuts in a crack. And then what I mean by multi-pitch, that's where you're climbing up a ways on the rock, you're building an anchor with rope, your partner is coming up with you, and then they're going higher up on the cliff face and making an anchor, and you're kind of doing that until you're at the top. So I came into mountaineering with a pretty big experience in just general climbing technique and outdoor safety and rope systems, stuff like that. So I kind of had that background and that baseline. And a lot of people will find a mentor, someone who's experienced in mountaineering, to kind of help teach them.
Did you have one?
Sorry?
Did you have a mentor?
No, me and my friends just kind of taught ourselves. And again, we were coming into this with kind of a previous outdoor background and knowledge. So I think we were able to pick it up a little faster than if you were just, just starting to get into hiking or something like that. But there's a number of organizations in the Portland area that will also do classes and stuff like that for people who want to get into mountaineering. So there's also that avenue you can take courses.
Yeah, cool. Before we get into some of the things that you do to mitigate risk and to prepare, Brian and Dan, any other questions you have at the moment?
Well, I was kind of curious. Overall, I mean, how I guess it's not that long in length, but it, is it much more difficult to actually come back down versus going up? I mean, that's the part that always gets me, like when I'm going through like a narrow area or something like that on the way down.
Yeah, yes and no. Technically, it can be a little bit harder, especially when you're down climbing something steep, because you don't have that visibility down to where your feet are and where the footholds are. And with Mount Hood, so typically a lot of people go up the pearly gates, and then you'll traverse over a zone called the catwalk, which is just like a narrow ridge, and you can see down many thousand feet to your left and down many thousand feet to your right. And then after that, you're at the old chute, which I mentioned was another route to the top. And a lot of people will come down that old chute. And it can be a little bit easier, but with any little steep section or a little icy section, yeah, it can be just a little bit harder because you can't see your feet, and you maybe do a little extra kicking to make sure your crampons have purchase. But I find once you're like out of that technical terrain, then it's pretty easy going to get down the rest of the mountain, especially when you have skis. Or you're able to glissade, which most people don't glissade on Mount Hood because the fall lines aren't good. Fall line, what do I mean by that? It's just kind of the natural slope of the hillside, and the slope, if you were to slide on your butt on Mount Hood, it would take you kind of off a cliff and into a bad canyon that you wouldn't want to be in. So most people just hike down because you can't slide down that well.
Yeah, and what's the pronunciation? Glissade?
Glissade.
Yeah, so you glissade off route rather quickly, huh?
Yeah, and for a mountain like Mount Adams, which is a volcano in Mount Washington, the southern slope of that is steep, and it gets a lot of traffic. And so you'll actually get these chutes from people over and over glissading down the same spot. And it's almost like you're in like a bobsled or something. And you can get going really fast, and it's a lot of fun. And you can tear up your pants too if you're not careful.
Brian, did you have something? Oh, go ahead, Dan, and then we'll see Brian.
So how many people don't prepare very well and have to be, rescued off the mountain, help either by people or actually call for, mountain rescue, in a typical month?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but especially in the springtime, when you get good weather windows and a lot of people head up, you see a lot more of it. If anyone's interested in like learning about these high mountain things, I would encourage you to figure out what your local search and rescue team is and follow them on social media if they have it. Here it's Portland Mountain Rescue, and they do a really good job updating their Instagram page with like current conditions on Mount Hood and also kind of accident reports. And man, last year I think we had like, I don't know if it was like 3 days or 5 days, but it was like 3 or 4 rescues in a very short amount of time. I think there was multiple in a day. And accidents do happen, whether it's someone who's not prepared or there's a gear malfunction or someone just lost their balance. Things happen. And when you're in steep terrain, especially that's so high up, like Mount Hood, you could be sliding for 600 feet before you come to a stop. So, and that's usually something you don't kind of get up and shake off of.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially with the icy conditions as well, that makes that kind of a fall a lot worse than normal.
Yeah, and I see in the chat, Adam K6ARK said Portland is a badass team. Also, the Mount Hood SAR Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the team out of Mount Hood is called the Hood Rats.
Brian, what about you? Did you have anything?
When you were talking about the sliding down the mountain, I was having visions of Christmas Vacation with Clark Griswold and the flying saucer with the lubricant on it.
Man, when I saw that movie as a kid on VHS, I laughed so hard. Me and my dad must have rewound that scene and watched it like 9 times in a row.
It's a classic.
Yeah, I should say when you're glissading, you're using your ice axe to control your speed. And if you do need to stop, you flip over and hold on tight and stick the end of the axe into the snow and slow yourself down to a stop. So it's a controlled slide when you're glissading.
I used to use my skis for that until they flipped off or something. So
well, now when I fall on my butt and sliding down the hill, I'm just going to tell everybody, no, I was just glissading.
Just glissading.
It'll have more style points that way.
Kyle's laughing out loud. Me too, Brian. Old Uncle Eddie.
You buy yourself something real nice, Charlie.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what you do to prepare, Tim. Just talk to people about what types of things you do to make sure that you're safe and mitigate your risk. And then we'll get to, I think, probably have time for one more question I have anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a lot of planning ahead and looking at the weather. Usually start about 5 days out, looking at the weather. And I mentioned weather window, and often it'll be storming and just not good conditions. And then you'll get maybe one day, something like 12, 18 hours of good weather. So it's kind of being ready to pull the trigger and ready to go. If you're going with a group of people, it's really good to have a plan and have everyone agree on that plan. So I kind of mentioned these different checkpoints for Mount Hood. And so it's like, okay, we're going to go up to here. We'll have our breakfast, and kind of along the way, whether you're, doing a popular route like going up Mount Hood, or you're somewhere else in the backcountry, it's good to have the plan of evaluating along the way as well. And really, everyone has to advocate for themselves and their own comfort level, and you have to respect that comfort level as well, and be willing to turn around if maybe you're going into terrain and your partner isn't comfortable being in that terrain. It's okay to turn around and make those, and it's really good to make those decisions. In terms of like specific preparedness, I use the website avalanche.org quite a bit. And that has specific avalanche forecasts. Here, I'm going to quickly share my screen again.
Okay, go
if
ahead.
I can. Okay, so can you see this, Charlie?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is avalanche.org, and it's an avalanche awareness and forecasting website. So there's resources to learn about avalanches, and you can sign up through avalanche courses through it as well. And you can also read about avalanche accidents and kind of gain some knowledge that way. I would highly recommend taking an avalanche course if they're available in wherever area you might be. I did a 3-day course on Mount Hood, and it gave you kind of the background of really kind of how to read the avalanche forecasts and plan for them. Oh, I opened a new tab and I don't think my sharing went along with it. So let me move over. But how to read the avalanche forecast, and also just kind of in the field practice of using avalanche beacons, digging snow pits, and learning how to read the snow and kind of make those snow evaluations. So if you're out doing like a backcountry ski, you'll stop along the way and dig a snow pit, and then you'll evaluate the different layers in the snow. And you may find something like a big block of really good consolidated snow, but then as you go down, all that could be sitting on really loose, kind of faceted, sugary snow, and that's a potential glide plane that all the snow above it could slide on. Okay, so here's
kind of like riding down on gravel, basically, right? Is that kind of the scenario?
How do you mean?
Well, like an icier, more compacted area over top of snow that's more granular, kind of like it'd be kind of like gravelly. It'd just kind of ride down on top of that.
Yeah, it's like a weaker, less consolidated snow. Now, for the forecast, it gives you something like this with above tree line, near tree line, and below tree line. And then there's different levels such as low, moderate, considerable, and high. And I think the main thing that I learned in how to read these is, okay, so avalanches typically happen they happen on slopes between 30 and 45 degrees. So what does that mean? If it's a high or considerable danger day, that may only be on slopes that are above 30 degrees. Now you could go out and find terrain that's below 30 degrees and it's not connected to an area higher elevation that's likely to have an avalanche and go on through. So it really taught me doing this 3-day course how to evaluate maps and figure out where the safe places are to go. So I do a lot of planning and looking at maps and figuring out if it's safe to go out. The forecast will also give you the different types of avalanche problems that you might encounter. And then it tells you where you might find them. So here, wind slabs, they'll be on any aspect right now, and it'll be at or above tree line, is what this is saying. Now you can encounter scenarios where maybe it's a wind slab at or above tree line, and it's all on the eastern aspects. And so that kind of gives you a first kind of planning step. Okay, we want to avoid these eastern aspect slopes because those will be loaded with wind snow. And you can find that terrain that's maybe safer to go to.
Very cool. Yeah, Adam says he's heard a statistic that almost every death, I think he says, occurs on a moderate hazard day.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, backcountry skiers have avalanche training and they know where to go into. they kind of know where to go into avalanche terrain and they know how to evaluate it, but there's still a hazard there. So it's kind of self-selecting that people are going into these hazardous terrain. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
It was Adam saying that moderate hazards, that's what we're, and then you were.
Yeah, I think it's people kind of self-selecting going into those, but also, it being moderate, you think like, okay, it's maybe not as bad as considerable, and maybe it's a little safer when it's not actually.
Yeah.
I actually have a colleague who was from my previous career who was actually trapped and injured in an avalanche. He's a professional guide now, but he was a guy I worked with on the medic job.
Well,
so I would imagine
it's amazing he survived because it's
seldom.
Yeah. Things you can do if you are interested in getting into this is, again, taking a course, and you can get some specific gear like a avalanche beacon. This was actually my first transceiver. It's a transceiver that works on, I think it's 453 megahertz, and lots of different brands. They'll have different features, but they all work together. And so in terms of like planning, Charlie, at the trailhead, you set a plan, everyone turns their beacons on, and when the beacon is on, it's always sending a signal. And then you test at the parking lot and make sure that it's working and that someone is able to receive your signal. And you kind of keep this close to your body. It's not something you put in your backpack. This one comes with a harness. A lot of like backcountry pants and jackets have a specific pocket for these transceivers to go in. And it's a pocket you don't use. You're not putting any snacks or anything in it. It stays zipped up and stays against your body. And in the event of an avalanche, and if someone is buried, the other people in the party will switch their transceivers to receive. And then this helps zero in on where the trapped person may be, and you start your rescue from there.
Oh, okay. I always wondered how that worked.
Yeah, it's a very steep death curve. So with avalanches, so it's very important to get the person located and unburied as quickly as possible.
So we're talking like kind of like 10-minute kind of time frame, right? Tops.
Yeah, it's not the sort of thing where you call 911 first to get like a helicopter rescue started first. You got to get them unburied first.
Yeah. Okay, I do want to go through a few comments, but was there anything else? We covered the gear a little bit, I think. We covered some of the mitigation. Is there anything else that we need to talk about as far as just kind of how you prepare, what you take along, those types of things, or did we cover it all?
I think we got a good base, unless anyone has some questions. Again, anyone can email me, and I'm happy to answer questions about backcountry or where to find resources, stuff like that.
Okay, let's go ahead and get a few of those comments and things out of the way. I wanted to, first of all, bring up this here. Richie's Radio Room gave us $4, so thank you so much. Every single time we're on, he does that, and we really appreciate his support. I think he's about the only one that does, but so that's good. Thank you. The next comment, I think, is right here. Have you dealt with altitude sickness personally, Tim?
Not recently, but I have dealt with it when I was backpacking in high school out of Mineral King in California. I think we have some California people in the chat. Maybe they know that area. But we were headed up over Sawtooth Pass there. And yeah, we got altitude sickness and we ran out of water. We were dehydrated, and we ended up doing the pass twice because we lost the trail on the other side of it. And an afternoon thunderstorm was headed, so we made the decision to go back over the pass down to a lake where there was a nice camping spot. But yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And really the only thing you can do is hydrate and try to get to a lower altitude.
Yep. And this one's from Justin. Tim, did you do the advanced CW ops by now?
I did, and I dropped it because I was not ready for it and did not have the time to put in the work. Charlie was in that class.
Yeah, I finished it, but a few people dropped. But I get it. I had to start a few times on some of them, so it's not. Timing has to be right, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the CW Ops intermediate class that I did was really focused on kind of more contesting style, and the advanced course was short stories. And I wasn't ready for short stories.
Yeah. Ham Radio Live. This is Larry, and Larry has a show. He's actually dropped in the comment here. Please remember to give thumbs up and to subscribe. But I encourage you to give a thumbs up to his shows and subscribe to his live, which he does quite often. He has a great show, very positive and uplifting. Ham Radio Live, Larry. So thank you for being in here, Larry, and joining us for a little bit. See, I think there was one more comment that was pertinent, or a question, maybe not. Let me ask Mike.
Chris in the chat said taking an avalanche safety course is definitely one way to get a strong appreciation of their danger.
Yeah.
It was really eye-opening, and if you have the opportunity to take a course, it is well worth the $300 to $500, however much it is.
Yeah. So my final question for you is setting up HF on those mountains. We talk about, getting to the top in and of itself. I mean, I can understand why you were doing VHF only, because it's so much lighter and such a smaller footprint. But you have done HF, and so talk about how you do that, but yet avoid causing danger for others.
The couple times I've done HF from these high summits, there haven't been a lot of other people around. So nothing really in the danger there, which is nice. I did do Mount St. Helens last year, and it was very windy at the top, and I did not want to put a mast up, so I just threw my antenna out on the snow, and it worked great. I got great signal reports, working 20 meters, and I think maybe I worked 40 meters also, but when I do these, it's usually a pretty short activation, especially if it's very cold. And the limiting factor is kind of how cold my fingers get.
Yeah, that's me too with winter. It's especially when you're doing the key, right? It's the Morse code is even worse. Well, I bring it up because just as a reminder to everybody that if you are in high traffic areas, then you just kind of got to move away at least a little bit. And I'm sure that's what you did. You got to a place where there weren't a lot of people coming and going. You said there weren't a lot of people anyway, but if there's high traffic areas, whether there's people there or not, and you move away from those, right?
Yeah, so a great example would be Mount Hood, where it's actually a pretty wide, like the AZ would actually be considered pretty wide, and people do kind of congregate on the top. So it's kind of good to find maybe a flat-ish spot a little bit away from where everyone is up taking selfies and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been guilty on occasion, not realizing that there was a lot of people coming up and set right on top, and then people come up and I've ruined their views. And it's you got to be mindful. And there's been a time or two where I went, dang, I shouldn't have set up there, but you learn.
Yeah, it happens, or you'll like be the only one somewhere and you'll throw your antenna up over the trail, and then inevitably someone will come walking down the trail.
Yep.
Go right into it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're coming to the end here, guys. I wanted to turn it back over to the co-hosts for any other questions that they have, and to I guess sign off, and then we'll I'll give you another minute, and then I'll sign off, and we'll then I guess congregate over at Ham Radio 2.0's live stream here in about 3 minutes. So, Dan?
Oh, well, Tim, it's been great having you on the show. I certainly learned a lot. It's definitely out of my wheelhouse, these kinds of mountains, but it sure would be interesting to see some of these in person someday. So a lot of exercise is required for me, though.
If you have stairs, do them. But open invitation to guide up Mount St. Helens sometime.
Yeah, I think Dan said it well, and here WA7J&J did as well. All kinds of skill levels when activating SOTA summits, and always impressed to hear stories from skilled mountaineers. Nice job, Tim. And to that point as well, there's drive ups. So it's from drive ups to probably what you're doing, or maybe even more difficult. But there's all kinds.
Yep,
and
all kinds of levels.
Absolutely.
All kind of levels. And I do want to say, like, some of these volcanoes are more technical than others. So something like Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams, yes, you do need to have an ice axe and crampons and know how to use those, but they're just really long, steep hikes.
Yeah.
And if you're game and in shape for a long, steep hike, you can get to the top of these volcanoes.
Yeah. So Tim invited me out to do Mount St. Helens, and things didn't work out, but it's probably good because I need to train a little bit more for it. But I am training right now for it, actually. And so hopefully sometime in the future, within the next couple of years, I'll be able to fly out there and hit Mount St. Helens with you. And to Adam's point here, this kind of stuff is possible for many. Just have to work your way up to it.
Yeah, and it's actually a good thing that trip didn't work out, Charlie, because we got hit with a giant snowstorm and you couldn't even get to the trailhead without like maybe a snowmobile or something. So it worked out for the better.
Yeah. Brian?
I got nothing in closing. It was great stories, great info. I probably could ask you a bunch more questions, but we definitely don't have the time for it right now. But next time around for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to be on. And anyone can email me and I'll answer their questions or give you tips.
Cool. Any last comments, Tim?
No, just have fun, be safe.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate you coming on. It was a real pleasure, and I like Brian said, I think that it was a really enjoyable, good information. I really enjoyed the conversation and what you were saying. So why don't you hang around while we end the stream? And to those of you in chat who joined us, thank you so much. Thanks to those of you who'll be listening later on the podcast, and thanks to those of you who will watch this on YouTube. We appreciate all of you. We'll catch you in 2 weeks. I think we'll have Gaston on. I think he changed his call sign to KT7RUN, if I'm not mistaken. It's the Tech Prepper. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.
7-3.